The Florida Panthers won in multiple ways on their California trip, but have a little bit of an injury setback when it comes to their roster. We're going to discuss that more here on today's Locked On Florida Panthers podcast.
Your Locked On Panthers, your daily podcast on the Florida Panthers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And welcome into this Monday, November 20th edition of the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, where it's your team every day. Thank you for making the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast your first listen of the day. I'm Armando Velez from the Hockey News, and you can follow me on X at MondoMan12. Follow the show account on X and Instagram at LO_FLA Panthers. And shout out to the everydayers who come back here and get your daily Florida Panthers fix. You can subscribe to this podcast anywhere you listen to podcasts and on YouTube. And if you're on YouTube, make sure to smash that like button and subscribe to the show, as the Florida Panthers are continuing their winning ways and continuing to get somewhat healthier. We'll discuss more about the injury front in the second segment on today's show. And then third segment, we'll be previewing the Edmonton Oilers as the Panthers welcome them to town tonight at 7 p.m. from Amerant Bank Arena. But let's discuss more about the finish to the California trip, as the Florida Panthers finished 2-1-0, 4 out of the 6 points, where this game was dominant in the first 40 minutes for the Florida Panthers and all. And it's great you have 3 season debuts here of Brandon Montour, Aaron Ekblad, and Jonah Gadjovich on the roster as well. And think about when you see Josh Mahura going to the far side half wall and then going on IR, and then you have reinforcements coming back and all. And with the Panthers, this is also the thing. You bring in those guys back into the mix. They're practicing. They're getting a feel for each other again, as well as pushing each other through these IR skates. Patrick Hornquist helping them out as well, which Aaron Ekblad spoke on Sunday when they were at practice at Amerant Bank Arena when they got back from their trip and all. And the power play does still need a little bit of work, even though there wasn't really much changes with bringing back Aaron Ekblad and Brandon Montour. But we saw Brandon Montour be on that first power play unit when Sasha Barkov did go out after that knee-on-knee collision in the neutral zone on Jackson LaCombe as well. But you think about the Florida Panthers dominating getting double the amount of shot attempts at 5-on-5 over the Anaheim Ducks in the first 2 periods. I mean, shot attempts at 5-on-5 in the third were 19-1 at 5-on-5. And Stolarz came out big, really, especially in the middle frame for the most part as well. And where he was better with his rebound control, especially with Ryan Strome getting out in front. I mean, Adam Henrique had 6 shots on goal on this one. Frank Vetrano had 5, including a power play goal, which special teams is still, something that could be improved on when it comes to this Panthers team. Let's see what the changes go when it comes to what happens with the changes long term when Sasha Barkov does come back. Does OEL stay on the power play as well with the Panthers? But also the thing is, when you look at the defensive pairs for the Panthers, and you're saying, and this is the plan the whole time, where Forsling and Ekblad were going to be back together. You knew that Nico Mikkola was going to be part of the top 4. As far as even weeks ago, Paul Maurice talking about how there are 4 guys that that are going to be in the lineup, and those 4 guys he was not including Aaron Ekblad and Brandon Montour in that. He was talking about the 4 guys that were currently in the lineup and all, and then you add Aaron Ekblad and all to the mix. That's the mix that you want. OEL not having the pressure of playing top line minutes, even though he's currently on power play 1 and all. And the good news about Friday night for the Panthers is, a few days ago, even when I was discussing with Kirby Lupol of the FLA Cat Hockey podcast, like, what's the biggest concern? Depth scoring. And you see Eetu Luostarinen and Anton Lundell coming into this one just on fire, where Eetu Luostarinen scores on a give and go, back to Anton Lundell, and then back to Eetu Luostarinen as he scores on John Gibson short side, and then Radko Gudas a little bit late to drawing to Eetu Luostarinen and all, and then pinning them in their own zone, aggressive on the forecheck, and Anaheim having a hard time breaking out. And even with the neutral zone, with the Ducks, the Panthers were consistently having the possession time and winning it for the first 40 minutes for the most part. And you see with Nicky Cousins getting that turnover, getting it to Anton Lundell, and then from the corner cross goes backdoor to Oliver Ekman-Larsson, where he scores to make it 2-0 for the Panthers and all. And you think about how the last 20, like we said earlier, 19-1 as far as shot attempts at 5-on-5 for the Anaheim Ducks. And this is also coming off a game where I'm not gonna lie to you guys. This is not a homer podcast as much as we want the Panthers to win, but I thought Jacob Silfverberg did score on that wraparound attempt. And I don't think whenever it came to the review that was a makeup call for not calling a 5-minute major on LaCombe for the knee hit on Sasha Barkov. I don't think the referees think that way when it comes to reviewing a play and trying to do a quote unquote makeup call. Both of them are two separate reviews at different times. You're thinking about one and not the other at that time and all. And when it comes to that, do I think that LaCombe probably could have had a 5-minute major? Yes, possibly. And I thought that with Silfverberg, I thought that it was going in. I thought it was in. I thought that it was possibly going to be tied 2-2 at 11-11 in the third period. But the Panthers, they count their lucky stars. We can criticize officiating for when things don't go the Panthers' way, but we could also thank the officiating when things do go their way. And Anthony Stolarz, thankfully, his leg was good enough and far enough, hugging that post with his left pad, and that when you zoom in on what could have been a goal by Silfverberg, that it was just pixelated when it came to zooming in and seeing, was it the stick or was it the puck there, when the Florida Panthers were thankfully on the winning side of that. And you hear the boos all over the crowd even towards the end of the game. And this one also got really chippy, and you notice that Radko Gudas, when it came to post whistle stuff, he went after the players that were not on the Stanley Cup Final run team for the Florida Panthers. So that's a little bit of something that I noticed and that other people noticed as well. And also, you got to give credit to Eetu and Lundell, as well, as when it comes to lineup shifts for injuries. Those are the first two guys you think of, the Swiss Army knives necessary for the Panthers, as far as when Sasha Barkov is missing, and also an opportunity for them to take his spot on the penalty kill, which the Florida Panthers, even though they gave up a power play goal on Friday, they are the first ones to get up on that spot. And even after the goal, they were creating so many different opportunities where OEL has a pinch, gets to Eetu Luostarinen, and then back to Lundell, where Lundell was very close to having a 3-point night. And there were times where Anthony Stolarz once again came out big as well. The Eetu Luostarinen Lundell line, 10-7 Corsi 4 to 7-3 shot attempts as well. Anthony Stolarz, I mean, look at his season. I mean, not the best start against the Chicago Blackhawks as well, and even in that the most recent start against the San Jose Sharks, even though he got a win. Now Anthony Stolarz's record is 3-1-0, 2.28 GAA, and 917 save percentage. Those are the things you like to see out of a backup goaltender, even though he has 4 starts. Which now Sergei Bobrovsky, as far as think about other wins for the Panthers here. They get 2 guys back after going 10-5-1. Their backup goaltender is performed well in this one as well. And you give your number 1 goaltender some rest while the time is different, going cross country, and for Bobrovsky, he's getting some time off in between start, which, assuming he's going to start on Monday, you're thinking 1, 2, 3 days off for Bob as well. So those are the multiple wins that the Florida Panthers had on this road trip. Not only the 4 out of 6 points, you get some rest for your number one. The backup gets 2 wins on the trip as well. And you have multiple guys stepping up as far as depth scoring as well. But in segment number 2, we are going to provide an update on Aleksander Barkov's injury after that knee-on-knee collision in the neutral zone. How long is he going to be out, and what do the forward lines look like for the Florida Panthers? We're going to discuss that and more here on the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast. Today's episode is brought to you by eBay Motors and drive, passion, and patience. What brings home the winning trophy is also what keeps your ride or die alive. eBay Motors has everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance, from superchargers, roof racks, exhaust kits, LED headlights, and more. Whether you're into speed, power, or lifestyle, eBay Motors has you covered. With over 122 million parts for your number one ride or die, you'll always find exactly what you're looking for. And with eBay Guaranteed Fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every time, or your money back. Because with eBay Motors, you're burning rubber, not cash. With all the parts you need at the price you want, it's easy to turn your car into the MVP and bring home that win. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply. eBay Guaranteed Fit only available to U.S. customers. Locked On has launched the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel on YouTube. Locked On Sports Today is here for you 24/7, covering the top sports story of the day with the local experts of Locked On, plus our national shows covering every league. Go to Locked On Sports Today on YouTube and subscribe to the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel. All right, guys. So segment number 2 here on this Monday, November 20th edition of the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast. Thank you once again for making the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast your first listen of the day. So we have a little bit of an update on Aleksander Barkov's injury after the knee-on-knee collision in the neutral zone on Friday night. And it just goes, Paul Maurice even said this, and it rings true. You can't get comfortable too much in an 82-game season, where game number 16, Montour and Ekblad come back, and you're thinking, man, what a perfect time for the Florida Panthers to be mostly at full strength. I know in the AHL, Spencer Knight is currently dealing with an injury, so he hasn't started in the last few days. And actually, congrats to Ludovic Weber on his first shutout in North America too. So want to say congratulations to Ludovic Weber, goalie for the Florida Panthers, doing it with the Charlotte Checkers. But you think about how with a contact sport and tough hits, and even hockey players having to tough it out to play. I mean, we're seeing that on the opposing side for tonight's matchup, which we'll get more into in segment number 3. And you think about with Barkov, let's also go right into what Maurice said. He's day-to-day. He said that it's something related to soft tissue that they got. He said, quote, "We got lucky," and all. And so he was talking about how when you're on the bench and you first see that someone is going out with an injury, right, it's in the back of your head, but the first thing you want to know is, are they walking around? Are they struggling to go back and forth from bench to locker room? And one of the first thing that Paul Maurice was notified of was that Sasha Barkov is walking around. So good sign number 1. He was asked whether it's bone bruise related for Sasha Barkov, even though there is padding with the shin guards there. Did not say whether or not it was. So did say soft tissue as far as that. And when it comes to that, day-to-day is as day-to-day as they come. He's going to say how he did say, how one day the swelling might be up, another day the swelling might be down, because, I mean, when the first initial hit happens, your adrenaline is going. So you're not going to feel the impacts until days later. But at at practice on Sunday that was more than 24 hours later than that. So signs are looking good. He's not going to play tonight for the Florida Panthers as they welcome in Connor McDavid and the Edmonton Oilers to town. So who's going to be the one that steps up? Once again, Anton Lundell. Finished the game on the top line. A little bit of shuffling here and there that was necessary, but like we said in segment number 1, Eetu Luostarinen and Anton Lundell are as valuable as they come to this team, because it's not only what they do on the third line, but they're going to be the first ones called up. And even Paul Maurice said a few years ago that their flexibility is necessary when it comes to this situation. We saw that when Sam Bennett was out for a little bit, and Anton Lundell goes to the second line as well, and all. And what another thing that when it comes to the defensemen too for the Florida Panthers, Josh Mahura, he said that it's probably not going to be a 2-week thing for him. Even though he is on IR, but he also said that Barkov is not currently on IR, which they had the option to. So that's another good sign. But we could see it retroactive to Saturday for the Panthers. But as far as carrying 9 defensemen on the team, he says that there is an avenue to carry 9 defensemen. Do I think he actually exercises that? No. But there is that benefit of Vyvis Belinskis being waivers exempt, but him being in his late 20s and all. And he said that it's a tough decision because Belinskis' play is of NHL caliber and all. And one thing that Paul Maurice did say that he was fairly impressed by from the time that Aaron Ekblad and Brandon Montour were out, is that they brought back that defensive compete from January 2nd of earlier this year, but from last season on, and that it continued on, even though there was new guys coming into the mix. And even when you think of how Kulikov is a second pair guy for the first 15 games of the season, OEL on the first, when you think about moving them down all the way to number 3, and also think about this, OEL is playing on his natural side now. The only one who's not playing on his natural side is Kulikov. And yes, we spoke mostly about he is comfortable playing on his offside as well. So there's more balance. Also, Aaron Ekblad did speak about on Sunday about him playing with Gus Forsling. He said that it feels like a cheat code playing with Gus Forsling, the comfort level that they have as far as that breaking out passes, especially that he feels the most comfortable with Gus Forsling as well. And the fact that the rehab process, they both spoke about how, he did speak about how thankfully this was an injury for him that he got back earlier than what was anticipated. So also was asked about how was the feeling like for the team getting off to a great start and him not being part of the mix. And he said that, and this is interesting, that the answer is twofold for this. If the Panthers got off to a horrid start and he's on the sideline, you're thinking, oh, I wish I were there to contribute. And then with the team winning, you think, oh, I want to be part of that winning for the team. So there's a perspective there for Aaron Ekblad that these guys just want to go out and play and all. So thankfully the health is better. As far as getting their legs going, yeah, Aaron Ekblad took a penalty on Friday. We're gonna see that's something we are used to seeing as far as that as the stick infractions and all, and out of position sometimes that we can see. But hey, you're still better with him in the lineup than you are without long term and all. And even Paul Maurice, going back to Mo, he says you can win in the short term without these guys. You have multiple guys stepping up in different places. This time it's going to be Anton Lundell, but you think about long term what the Panthers are as far as what they're trying to build and all. You gotta have your guys healthy as well for this one, as the Panthers, they are consistently getting incredible breaks as far as injury front as well. And knock on wood, hopefully it continues for the Cats, as they are hopefully not needing to dig into the AHL too much for injuries during this season. And Maurice spoke about how during a season you need about 28 to 30 guys. The original 23 men that you have to start a season, those aren't, your opening night lineup isn't going to be the same as game number 82. So it's going to take 28 to 30 guys up and down. And even if you decide to use waivers to pick up somebody, you're going to need every person there on the team and all. So hopefully the health is better for the Panthers, as they have a pretty tough homestand coming up this week, as they welcome in the Oilers, Bruins, and the Winnipeg Jets. The Winnipeg Jets currently have the leader in the Rocket Richard race in Kyle Connor. So it's not going to be the easiest of homestands here. But in segment number 3, we are going to preview tonight's game between the Florida Panthers and the Edmonton Oilers, as they open up a 3-game homestand right before heading to East Canada next week. We're going to discuss this and more here on the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast. Today's episode is brought to you by Sleeper. And a new NHL season brings all sorts of possibilities, whether it's Matthew Tkachuk scoring 50 goals or the Florida Panthers, their possibility of hoisting the Stanley Cup. You can win big by playing daily fantasy hockey on Sleeper, the official daily fantasy app of the Locked On NHL Network. Sleeper is our number one choice for daily fantasy sports, especially daily fantasy hockey, because Sleeper, you can win 100 times your cash on fantasy contests. You can pick with studs like Aleksander Barkov, Matthew Tkachuk, Connor McDavid, Sidney Crosby, Alex Ovechkin. They will need to record more or less than their sleeper projections for things like goals, assists, saves, plus minus, and more in a given game. To win a 100 times bet on Sleeper, you'll need to correctly predict the outcome of 8 player stats. You heard me, Cats fans. You can win 100 times your money playing daily fantasy hockey with Sleeper. So start paying attention and nail your picks so you can start winning big. Use promo code LOCKEDONNHL to get up to a $100 match on your first deposit. Terms and conditions apply. Use code LOCKEDONNHL. See Sleeper's terms of use for details and locational availability. Segment number 3 here on this Monday, November 20th edition of the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast. Thank you once again for making the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast your first listen of the day here on the Monday edition of the show. And with the Florida Panthers welcoming in the Edmonton Oilers, which the Oilers got off to a 3-9-1 start to the season, where lost to San Jose on the road, where San Jose got only their second win of the season, which San Jose got their first win against the Philadelphia Flyers, which that Flyers road trip when they went to California made very little sense. They beat the Ducks on the road. They beat the Kings on the road, but they lose to the San Jose Sharks on that same road trip. And then they beat the Edmonton Oilers a few nights later. And even after a road win for the Edmonton Oilers in Seattle, Jay Woodcroft gets the boot from the front office and all. And ever since bringing in Chris Knobloch, who was Connor McDavid's junior coach, they are 2-1-0 as well. And a lot of regression from the Edmonton Oilers going into this season, and they brought a good majority of their guys back. Matthias Ekholm, Darnell Nurse. I mean, Darnell Nurse is signed long term. They signed Evan Bouchard, who's now their power play one, who is now on their top pair as well. Jack Campbell, they put him on waivers, and he's currently in Bakersfield. And there was a highlight of him giving up a very head scratching goal with the Condors and all. And for Chris Knobloch, a successful junior coaching career in the WHL and the OHL. Like we said, he was Connor McDavid's coach in Erie, and spent 2 years as an assistant in Philadelphia, 4 years as the head coach of the Hartford Wolfpack. The record for Hartford was 112, 87, and 31. So Chris Knobloch was always seen as the guy who was a rising star. And we talk about how we don't want to use the same recycled coaches over and over again. This is an opportunity for one. So we can't complain when we see a new face in the NHL as far as getting the opportunity, in this case for Chris Knobloch. And the question is, mostly for the Edmonton Oilers, is who's in charge for this franchise? Kenny Holland is in his last year with the Edmonton Oilers, as he's likely going to retire. So who's the guy in charge? Is it CEO Jeff Jackson? Or is it Ken Holland making these decisions as he is on his way out? Because the writing is on the wall for them, as this is a big pressure situation for the Edmonton Oilers to maximize their window. Leon Draisaitl is going to be up for a contract after 2 years from now, 1 year after this offseason, and then Connor McDavid in 2 years. So, and Connor McDavid isn't having the best season of season in his career as well. A pretty poor start for him, but he's also playing hurt. 4 goals, 9 assists, 13 points in 14 games. And there's a funny Instagram post about Mike Matheson having more points than Connor McDavid, saying, oh, it's called NHL humor on Instagram. It's like, oh, so technically Mike Matheson is the greatest player in the NHL. So I got a little bit of a good laugh on that one as well. Connor McDavid missed 2 games right before the Heritage Classic, the outdoor game that they played against the Calgary Flames, which Edmonton ended up winning. And question was, did Connor McDavid rush back to get back into that game, an outdoor game, which, you know, you have to have your stars in order to have a lot of viewers there for that. And with how behind the Oilers are, 7 points out of a wild card spot right now, if you were if the front office were to go to Connor McDavid and say, hey, we know you're clearly hurt, let's sideline you for a little bit, that's not going to fly with him. He was told, but it was reported behind the scenes about how he was just PO'd as the losses were building up and up and up for the Oilers, and the players apparently weren't consulted in the coaching change for Edmonton as well. And then one person said that they were. So there's a lot of he said, she said, and all that. Well, in this case, he for as far as the coaching change as well. So let's go more into where the Edmonton Oilers were before the firing of Jay Woodcroft to a 3-game sample size. Goals for 2.69, and then after the firing is in 3 games 4. Goals against, still give up a good amount of goals in the back of their net. 3.92 before the firing, 3.33 after. Power play percentage is a little bit of a drop, but their PK percentage, 13% increase in those 3 games since Woodcroft's firing. So that is definitely a big help for the Edmonton Oilers. But 5-on-5 for Edmonton, they're -10. And this is a team where fast-paced offense, run and gun, you're gonna trade your chances with this team. And it's up to the Florida Panthers tonight to slow the game down, because especially with the Florida Panthers being without Sasha Barkov, it's going to be a lot easier said than done. And thankfully, with them being the home team, you have the last change. So you're going to get your matchups necessary when you see Connor McDavid get on the ice as well. So don't get into a track meet. That's a very simplistic key to the game as far as trying to get a win tonight for the Florida Panthers. And it really starts with the neutral zone for the Panthers against Edmonton. Force them to take penalties, because the Oilers, they go to the box more often than they go on the man advantage too. So force them to take penalties. Try to, like we said, if you generate that speed, you could likely get some interference calls, some hooks as well. If you're battling along the boards, you're gonna have to. And thankfully, with the Florida Panthers being bigger coming into this season, Steven Lorentz is going to be back in the lineup. He's going to be the fourth line center. Anton Lundell, not quite the size of Sasha Barkov. He's going to be on that top line. Hopefully you're going to win your board battles on a night like tonight. And we are seeing that for the Panthers, it's going to be a tough challenge. And this could possibly be a trap game for the Panthers too. Yeah, the record is not great, but we know that when the Edmonton Oilers turn it on, they can really turn it on, and it can be possibly a whole amount of goals that they can score as well. Last year they were the top power play unit in the league, and the Florida Panthers were able to eliminate the second best power play in the league in the Toronto Maple Leafs in the playoffs. But we know that the sleeping giant can come awake at any moment. Is 2-1-0 since the firing of Jay Woodcroft necessarily say that the sleeping giant is awake? Not there yet, because on Saturday, the Edmonton Oilers did blow multiple leads against the Tampa Bay Lightning, a 2-0 lead and then a 3-2 lead late into the game. So is the sleeping giant awake? That's the question that a lot of NHL fans are wondering with Edmonton, and it's gonna take a full 60-minute effort when you yourself, your team is down your top center. And also going back to the board battles, Kevin Stenlund is going to be on that third line right at center. He was spotted at the third line in practice, so going to be really a big battle especially with the center depth, as Connor McDavid is on one line, Leon Draisaitl is on the other. Connor Brown for the top line for the Edmonton Oilers. He is a game time decision, so no indication on whether he's going to play as of right now. We are recording this 10 minutes before morning skate from Emirates Bank Arena, 9:50 to be exact as well. So, and the jury's still out on a guy like Stuart Skinner as well, who was in the Calder race last year, who has probably the best mustache in the National Hockey League right now as well. So he's still a very young goaltender. So if you can get in those dirty areas and disrupt them, especially if you, like we spoke about, get on the man advantage, you are definitely going to get into his head and put some disruption there as well. So those are the keys to the game as far as the Panthers trying to get a win tonight, as they hope to get to 12-5-1 before their second matchup against the Boston Bruins coming on Wednesday night. It's going to be another year where the Florida Panthers will be facing the Boston Bruins right before Thanksgiving. So definitely going to be an interesting one tonight, as the Florida Panthers welcome in Edmonton, 7 p.m. puck drop, Bally Sports, Florida. And everydayers, not sure if we're going to have an episode tomorrow, as if you're watching this on YouTube, I am not at my home base right now. So Tuesday is going to be a travel day for me. So don't know if we are going to be able to record a podcast as far as a post game and all, but we will be discussing for sure. If we don't have a show tomorrow, we will be discussing it on Winans Wednesday, as we welcome in Jacob Winans into the show to preview the game against the Boston Bruins and discuss more about how the centers look, especially with Barkov. And what more do we have to talk about as far as what the power play could look like if there are some changes as well. Montour is going to be on power play 1. So we're going to see about how it all meshes together and all, with the mixing and matching and all. So definitely so much to talk about regardless of what happens in this game. So if you don't see an episode tomorrow, for sure we will be back with you on Wednesday. But in the meantime, if you like what you're hearing, please subscribe to the podcast and be notified every single time the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast jumps into your podcast feed. Don't forget to also subscribe to the other shows on the Locked On NHL network, including Locked On NHL, Locked On Fantasy Hockey with Flip Livingstone and Steele Roden, and Locked On NHL Prospects. Thank you once again for making the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast your first listen of the day. So I'm Armando Velez, signing off. And you've been listening to Locked On Florida Panthers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, where it's your team every day.